all of us sitting here can decide that we are going to define ourselves primarily on the base of the fact that we are part of one race.
So if we want to bring about the change that we need to desire in companies, we need to change mindset and behaviors. So we can't just focusing on behaviors alone.
So leadership is about identifying potential, attach value to it, and develop it to the maximum.
I came across a quote by a Russian author, but ultimately what he says about work is this: if one wanted to crush and destroy a man, to mete him out the most terrible of punishments, all that one would have to do is make him do work that was completely and utterly devoid of usefulness and meaning.
I think the important thing is, what I'm trying to say is, you lead automatically because you're born to lead. You don't lead automatically because you're appointed to lead.
I think if you're arrogant, you always look down on people. And if you miss, by example, if you miss the person, you'll see a carpet, you see nothing. Being humble and you look up to people, if you miss the person, at least you'll see the light, you'll see heaven. So for me, it's that kind of leadership for me was who I am.
When I was invited, as Krista said, to come do the leadership speeches and stuff, I honestly just didn't feel like you would come here and learn anything you don't know already, right? And I thought using where I am and my station in life with Tinus's journey and how far he's come and where he is today would be a lot more useful for people. Otherwise, I could just go rumbling with my stories elsewhere, right? So that's when we agreed that we'll get Tinus in the room, and I was surprised when Krista called me back to say Tinus has agreed to do this on condition that we're together.
She didn't really give me an opportunity to get out of it.
I must say, as early as yesterday, Tinus, I heard this from one of his MDs, that he went to his office and said, I'm sure I can still get out of this thing. And then the gentleman he was talking to, which I'm not going to write out now, then said to him, no, Tinus, you can't get out. You know, this thing is important. You have to be there. He's like, not if I get sick. So I'm glad Tinus did not get sick. He's here. Otherwise, it would have been really hard.
Is Ross in the meeting?
No. So, you know I'm telling the truth, right? Because he knows the guy. So maybe before we really get into the Q&A, we'll get Tinus maybe a few moments to just give us the background, right? Not our CEO of AFGRI, Tinus, right? Who is Tinus? Where is Tinus from? What's the story?
Yeah, thanks, Bongani. It's quite a boring story. I grew up in Nelspruit in the Lowveld. Met my wife when she was in grade 6, standard 4. I was in standard 7 or grade 9. We were neighbors. She moved to Pretoria. Her parents moved to Pretoria. I followed that, and she went to varsity and got engaged, got married, got 3 lovely kids. So yeah, it's been a long road between me and my wife. Maybe even boring sometimes.
How long has it been?
Well, we married now for 38 years.
That's almost for as long as I've been alive, right?
And even my career is also just as boring as my time when I grew up. I started at the land bank, and then I joined AFGRI. So I've been with 2 organizations, land bank for 30 years. Then I got the opportunity I don't know if many of you still remember Louis Smith. One of his guys passed away, and he approached me to say he wants me to join AFGRI. He discussed it with Jeff Wright, who was the MD of the group at that stage, and Jeff phoned me, he said I must come and see him. And then he said doesn't want me to go into the retail environment. He rather sees me to join Chris in the financial team, which I joined just more than 13 years ago. So in a nutshell, that's me. As I said, plain, simple, boring.
I don't think it's that boring. But so how important is balancing family life with work? Because being a CEO, you don't have the luxury of getting in at 8 and leaving at 4, right? Watching TV at 6. So how do you balance that, the family life, to have lasted that long means you're doing something right? And this is a selfish question because I couldn't balance it. So.
Yeah, I think it's to start with, I think it's very important to balance your life. And I think I missed the trick when I was young. I was sort of a go-getter when I joined the land bank, and for me, it was all about work, and I think I wasn't fair towards my family, especially the kids when they were young. I got 2 boys and a girl. But I think it's never too late. To be honest, I think my relationship with the 3 kids at the moment is probably the best it's ever been. So, yeah, for me, it is very important to balance that. And again, I mean, when you're young, you think you can do everything. You just want to rule the world. But it comes at a price sometimes. And luckily for me, as I said, it's never too late to rectify that. So, yeah, it is very important.
Was there a specific point where you thought, hey, I'm going too much with the career thing, let me pull it back?
Yeah, that was, again, I think it was maybe very late in my life when my kids were sort of approaching matric. And I think then you sort of missed the biggest or the important part of their career. But yeah, it was when I got a very senior position at the land bank and sort of dealing with all the cooperatives out there. That's why I was involved with AFGRI. I was doing the finance for the AFGRI group at that stage. So when I was appointed head of the corporate finance division, it sort of changed. Then I realized you don't have to fight to get to the top. I mean, there's other ways in doing that.
Yeah, and just the tricks of the trade. Anything you've learned to balance. This is to the benefit of the younger managers, right? So, what are the tricks that you've used to fuse the two worlds, like work and family, and that balance? Yeah, there are young dads here. I'm sure this would be useful. And young moms, sorry, young moms too would use the trick.
Well, I don't know. I don't have the answers. What I can tell you, if it was 10 years back, I would have said work hard. But these days, the correct answer, I suppose, is work smarter, not harder. But yeah, it's very important, and I even learned that from Patrick when he talked to his people. He's always of the view that you should balance your life. Yeah. It's very important to spend some time with your family. Yeah. But yeah, my advice to everybody would be it's very important to do that, and don't wait too long, but it's never too late.
Yeah. So career-wise, is there anything you would do differently, looking back? Is there...
Maybe join AFGRI earlier.
Chris is not in the room. I checked.
He's in London, yeah.
Yeah.
I must tell you, Bongani, when I joined AFGRI, I was very surprised. Coming out of the land bank that went through my last 10 years in the land bank, I would say we went through at least 5, 6, 7 restructurings. It is a state-owned organization. And when I joined AFGRI, I was very surprised about the small issues that the staff were complaining about, and I thought to myself, you don't really know what's happening out there. So the working environment in AFGRI for me was very nice. I mean, I was fortunate. You mentioned Chris. I was fortunate since I joined AFGRI. I was reporting to Chris, so I had a very nice career, although I think too short. And again, if I had the opportunity, if I had it all over again, I would have joined AFGRI much earlier than what I've done.
Sure. I'd do the same. Maybe let's change gears a little bit and get to know you, because I know you're a reluctant public person, right? And very reserved. And some of us look like they're out there, but I think we're similar in that way. What in your personal space gives you comfort? What do you do in your personal space? I know for me, music and reading, right? I'll tell you about my taste in music just now, but for you, what works for Tinus in his personal space?
Well, I think like most of the guys in the room will say, for me it's all about sport. If I get home and I switch on the TV and put it on I don't even know what kind of sport. I mean, whether it's soccer, cricket, rugby, tennis, archery, anything. I really love sports.
You had to add archery, right?
Yeah. But if I don't watch archery enough, Patrick will remind me to do it.
So do you hold the remote at home?
Well, we've got 2 TVs, and so if my wife was watching some stupid soapy thing, then I will sit in the room.
She's also not in the room. Favorite movie? What, do you watch films?
You won't believe me, and I'm dead honest with you if I tell you that I don't follow any channel on TV except sport. There's no series that I watch. If there's a movie, I will watch it, but I will probably never finish it because I get bored quite.
Music? Who's your favorite artist?
Music is a bit before your time, and I think that will be a shock to most of the people. At least I know that Ross is aware of this. I really love the old hard rock stuff.
Like who? AC/DC?
Well, even before them. Uriah Heep, Deep Purple. You can mention them. Led Zeppelin.
Oh, Led Zeppelin. Yeah. Okay, cool.
And I whenever I get to London, Johan is also aware of this. Whenever I get to London or overseas, I will always try and visit a CD shop to buy DVDs, not CDs, specifically DVDs. And I thought to myself, when I'm getting old and I'm sitting there with a shaking head, I will sit and watch some heavy music.
You know you don't have to buy them anymore, you can stream them.
Yeah. I'm talking about 10 years ago.
I'm going to open an Apple account as a gift from me to you.
So I've just wasted a lot of money.
Yeah. And space. Everyone doesn't like it. And books, do you have a book that has made an impact in your life? I know there's a book I read when I was like 14, and I think it's kind of opened a different part of my brain. Do you have a book like that?
Because of my involvement with the Toady Group when I was still part of Unigro, the guys that went up to the Congo, Wynand the Toy was one of the recce's. He gave me his first book, and that sort of, I found that very interesting, and I read a lot of those kind of books. So for me, it's about the history when we were in a war with Angola and Africa.
Yeah. Okay. And just summing this up, what does success look like to you? And we'll touch on your leadership style, but what does success for you, where you sit today, looking back and looking forward to the rest of your life? What does it look like to you? What is it?
Well, if you can leave something behind of you, I think while you can still add value, you should use that opportunity. But looking back, I think if you can leave something behind, if you can leave a message, and even if it's something small, I know, and I mentioned it to you before, I don't think my management style is probably the recommended one. But I think there's for me it's very difficult to to try and be arrogant and be the dominant leader. I think there's value for me in being humble. And I mentioned it the other day to Krista. I think if you're arrogant, you always look down on people. And if you miss, by example, if you miss the person, you'll see a carpet, you see nothing. Being humble and you look up to people, if you miss the person, at least you'll see the light, you'll see heaven. So for me, it's that kind of leadership for me was who I am. Chris at one stage tried even to change it. He wasn't very successful. If I can leave something behind, I think if you don't have to be arrogant to be successful. And even, well, you touched about the leadership. For me, even there, if you look at the room full of people here, most of them is somehow in a leadership position. If it's not in the office, maybe at home, maybe in a sport. Somehow everybody is involved in a leadership position. And if you ask them how would they see themselves and what would they want to be as a leader, I can guarantee you most of them will say they want to be successful. And that's where the humility comes in again. For me, I think there's even a better option than to be successful. Not that I'm saying you shouldn't be successful. Obviously, it's very important. But for me, I think there's even a higher step that you can go. If you see yourself as useful, I think it's even better than successful. If you say successful, it's very much internally focused. It's all about me, myself, I. And if you say you're useful, then you focus on other people. It's how can you help them to become a better person? And leadership it's a tool. I mean, it's a tool to influence people, to make them better, to make them better. Focus on them, not only on yourself. It's about something bigger than yourself. So that's how I see it.
Do you think your ideas about leadership have evolved over the years, from when you were like 25, 30 to today?
Yeah, definitely. Again, when I joined the Land Bank, I was very difficult. I mean, I don't know if Ernst is here, but I was sort of like Ernst, who's in the workout division. And if somebody owes the Land Bank money, I will do anything to get the money back. And I was involved in a lot of even mergers, takeovers, everything just to get the money back. So, and I think somehow along the line I thought, well, it's not about just getting the money back. The Land Bank will still survive. But what I've done in my career is a lot of people in the process probably lost their jobs, and especially in the more smaller rural areas. So I think when I grew older, I changed my management style. It's not only about the Land Bank, it's about people. And I think just before I left the Land Bank, one example is Oranje Co-op, which was in Appington. They also had a lot of financial difficulties, and I went to the bank and say, well, I think we can manage this. I remember the farmers those days, a part of their pension was caught up in revolving fees in the co-op system. And I said to them, give me 2 years, and I think we can manage this out, and we can get our money back and probably get the farmers to have some say in the final dividend. And luckily it worked out. Unfortunately, it took longer than 2 years, but it worked out at the end. So I think there's other ways than just try and kill the business to get your money back.
And you mentioned that for you, success is the legacy, the story that you leave behind. What would you like that story to be for you? So if we were sitting here and talking about the Tinus story, what are some of the things that you're hoping to hear from people?
Focusing on other people, not only on yourself, which I've said before. But it's. I think, if I can put it in another way, I think stop looking in the mirror and rather look through the window. If you look in the mirror, you only see yourself. If you look through the window, you see somebody else.
But let's start with the man in the mirror, right? I'll tell you what one of your guys says, and I don't know if you're going to try and guess who this is, but one of the guys that has worked with you for quite a while sent us a message, and it reads, and I'm reading it verbatim, right? So we're not. Sometimes we have the privilege to work with special leaders. I had the privilege to work with Tinus, who I can say is the epitome of servant leadership. Tinus is a leader who, despite untold success, remained humble and grounded. We often joke that if you got too arrogant and puffed your chest out too far, it would not be long before your pants fell off. Don't know where that is. Tinus chose to lead with his head bowed down, choosing only to look up in praise of God and when thankful for his blessings. Tinus believed in people, and especially me, not me, but this guy, for which I will always be grateful. He has been a boss, a mentor, and a friend. This is from Ross Simmons. Right? I think.
I don't think I deserve that. But yeah.
We could hit you with another one and have you go pink now.
I think I really worked well with Ross. I think when I appointed Ross, I said to him, I've got the position, but the two of us will run this business. It's not me, it's both of us. And I think we really worked well as a team. We turned the business around. These days they make 100 million rand profit. That's me, that's Ross and his team. But I think the relationship between myself and Ross was very good. Following up on that, I think when I appointed Revaja as CEO of the AFGRI Group, I did the same. I said to her, listen, we should take the decisions as a team. And exactly the same happened when Chris stole her from me, and and when I appointed Jacob. I think the two of us also work very well together. And for me, it's a team effort. And I think Krista mentioned it with the introduction. If you look at AFGRI, if you just look at those MDs, I mean, for me, I've got Patrick in equipment, I've got Ross in Unigro, I've got Jacob on the grain side, Marion on Lemong. So it's all very, very strong individuals. So for AFGRI to make a 400, 500 million EBITDA, it's easier.
But which also is a testament to your leadership, right? Because I was actually thinking about it. You're leading a lot of strong-willed individuals, right? I mean, God forbid I lead Patrick Roux.
It's tough.
To have been able to do that with such grace, and you don't look like it's a strive for you. But I know the sort of lieutenants behind you, and Jacob himself, he may look agreeable, but he's a stubborn individual, right? And this is from a loving place. He's a stubborn guy. So how do you morph yourself so gently into a leader of men and women, Marion?
Well, I think they're very different. Yeah. And I can give you another example. When Manla was appointed as a CEO of the international business, when we had an introduction when I introduced him to Ross and Uzziah, and I introduced him to Patrick and Kaniels. Unfortunately, Patrick couldn't make it. He was, I don't know where, but we chatted to Kaniels, and Manla said to me, but just see the way you introduced me to Ross and the way you introduced me to the equipment guys is totally different. I said, yeah, because it's a totally different management style. Yeah. And you have to adapt to that. I mean, if I tell Patrick how to run his business, he'll chase me out of his office. And very similar to Jacob and to Marion. I mean, I can't tell Marion how to run that emerging farmer book. She's a specialist. So, yeah, you must just take whatever is available and get the best out of them as a team.
Yeah. So that's a cue to flush your face again with some pink, right? So, So there's a, and I'm reminded when you're talking about the introduction.
So we have to go through this.
Yeah, we have to sit here, right? The hour's not out. So there's another one that we were sent secretly. Tinus did not know about this, and this is from Kagisho, and he reads: "Indeed, people respond in accordance to how you treat them. My first days at AFGRI, I felt welcome because you offered support and guidance should a need arise, and you practice this on a daily basis. What touched my heart was when you apologized for not being there on my first day to welcome me because you were on leave. You have been a big part of AFGRI Operations, a pillar of strength in difficult and good times. Your collective leadership experience and knowledge has brought the company to where it is today. A knowledge you were always willing to share and transfer to others. Even though I did not know you that long, you were not just our leader, but a mentor and a father. We will miss you so much." Now, before you jump in, for a black guy to call you father, take it from me. It's a big deal. Right?
I'm surprised he didn't call me grandfather because of my age.
Any last thoughts, Tinus? I think we've anything that you look at today and you think, young guys, again, I did say this was going to be selfish. It's about what we can extract. People like us coming up, what can we learn? What do you think we do wrong as young people?
Well,
so you can speak to me as the youth.
I don't know if I'm going to answer your question, but I'll try. I think for me, if I can give advice to everybody in the room, and I tried it, and I don't really think I succeeded in that, is to work as a team. I think we still operate too much in pillars, and I can start in AFGRI. I mean, for me, since the 1st of April 2017, when we became an independent company, for me that was the drive to get the equipment guys to support Unigro, or to get the Unigro guys to support equipment. And to a smaller extent, I think it became better, but we're not there yet. And a good example, again, within the AFGRI group, is Hinterland. We see Hinterland out there as the enemy. The service is poor. There's nobody from Hinterland yet. Service is poor, like very expensive. They haven't got a good name with the farmers. And so we just ignore that. But from a brand point of view, that's part of AFGRI. So the farmer out there will not see it as Hinterland. They will see it, this is AFGRI. And if I say we, Patrick and his team, Ross and his team, Marion and her team, everybody, Jacob and the grain guys, if we can work together to even help Hinterland to get to the next level, that for me, that is the advice that I will give. And then to go to a second step after that, if we can get the collaboration between the companies within AFGRI to work towards one goal, then we can start saying, okay, so how do we work closer to a company like Full Africa? You still sit with animal feeds. It's not animal feeds, it's AFGRI animal feeds. Again, the branding for me is very important. And we don't know what's happening in Full Africa, and I don't think those people know what's happening in AFGRI. So for me, yes, first start internally, focus on the companies, get the collaboration between the companies better, and maybe for Teresa, even from an HR point of view, we should change the bonus structure and say to the guys, 50% of your bonus will be on what is happening in AFGRI, not only in Unigro or in Le Mans or whatever. If AFGRI is performing, 50% of your bonus is secured, so that the people start focusing on the company outside of his own company. What's happening in Hinterland? How can we help them? When we get that right, and then say, okay, how can we get closer to a company like Full Africa or GAS or GroBank or whatever? So for me, it's a long answer, but I think we should really get out of this smaller world and focus on the bigger picture.
Collaborate more.
Definitely.
And then worry about what's outside you as well, not just you. Yeah?
But I think it's enough about me, Bongani. Let's talk about the future. Let's talk about how you see the future. How do you see we take AFGRI forward?
How I see AFGRI. Okay, so maybe let's think about it as South Africa, right? So for me, it's always the context, and then we can get to, as you say, the smaller chunks. And I think for me as managers in this group, you know, we are called to manage within a context. So a manager who's managing in Singapore, in India, or the US has a different context to us. Our context is what we inherited, what we're sitting with here. You can hear where I'm going, right? It's the elephant in the room. So, but I think what's comforting for all its ills, it's that it's what we inherited. Not one person in this room has created the mess we're sitting with as a country, right? This racial thing between us, it's actually something we all inherited. Not all of us, not one person here is old enough to have contributed to the policies of the past, right? So there's a great guy we invited to come see us within Guess a few months ago, in December, called Timothy Maurice. He came to see us and he told us about the concept called sameness. So in this concept, and most of the guest guys would have been there, so at least I'm the only one with the mic right now, otherwise you'll tell the story. So he was explaining to us that at a neurological level, people, or rather babies, that have not been tainted, have not had the social messaging. So if you took a black child who's used to black mom and dad and sister and that, and you flashed, and I'm using a black child intentionally, and you flashed pictures of white people, the child's brain reacts differently to when he sees black people. But that just says in our DNA, we're coded to be attracted to sameness, right? I'm attracted to another black guy. If I was in London, when I spot a black guy, I move towards him, right? And when you spot a white person, you move towards him. It's not our fault, it's our coding, right? But what he challenges us to do is to say, if you stay in sameness, you would be mediocre because you'd have the same thinking, the same wiring and stuff. So for us as leaders, in order to be exceptional, you have to break sameness and therefore embrace diversity, right? So for me, I've always grappled with the race thing in South Africa, but it felt as though we were pointing fingers as opposed to really talking to the problem. And when this guy explained this, it sat well with me, because Tinus has been a great friend to me. So what I know in my experience, the racial experience in South Africa, does not reconcile with what he's been to me as a black friend and a white friend, right? In fact, I'll tell you, my grandmother would be turning in her grave today if I told her he's my friend. She'll be like, hey, how can you be friends with Bas? Are you crazy? Right? But this is our wiring. You know, I'll give you an example. And a lot of times when you talk about race, it feels like we're pointing to white people. But I can tell you, I'm racially wired because I'm South African. You know, most of you know I lived in London for a few years. And you know, you order a maid who goes to your house and cleans your flat while you're away, right? So I get back home early, and this maid is there. It's an agency, so you let them into your flat. And it was a white lady cleaning my house. I wanted to help. because it's our wiring, right? And I think when we remove the fact that we're just wired this way and make an effort to embrace that which is not the same as us, then we create a fantastic country, right? So for me, that's that. I'll give you another example. I was working with a colleague also in the UK, and there was a guy across the, I think I told you the story, Krista. There's a guy who had just crossed the road recklessly. And as I was trying to say to David, hey, that guy almost got hit by a bus or something, I said to David, because in my South African mind, it's important to say whether it's white or black, right? I say, see that black guy just almost got hit. David looks at me, for the first time in my life, he looks at me with this puzzled look to say, why does he have to be a black guy? He's a guy in a blue sweater, what's wrong? Right? And I think we do not realize how we all are, but in order for us to really turbocharge what we have as a country and as managers in diversified teams is actually embracing diversity. Not because you're a saint, but you know there's a benefit in the diversity. You know, so for me, that's always been a burning desire for me. You know, it's going across the line, but not as old ANC members would say, not as a sellout, but to really try and understand how is it that you think this is normal, and most of you don't think this is normal. You know, and I think we keep dancing around this thing because we're pointing fingers, but we are victims of the same thing, right? So we need to open ourselves up and make sure we let people in, right? If you look at your social media profile, your personal contacts on your phone, it's literally people that look like you. 90%, I bet you, right? You follow people that look like you. But that means we all think the same, we all do the same things, we all like the same team, and you don't have the diversity and the benefit of this country. One of the things that really hit me when I was thinking about the future of South Africa was think about the racial buckets, right? Black female, black man, white female, white male, right? Forget the split, like in numbers. Assume we're all equal numbers in South Africa, right? So 25% each. In South Africa, the laws that none of us are responsible for systematically allowed only a quarter of our country to thrive, right? Only a quarter. And look what we achieved as a country. Now, us unleashing the rest of the capacity, the human capacity in South Africa. So with 25% of our capacity, we achieved an economy that's largest in the continent. Now, unleash the rest of the 75%. I don't see how we can't be positive about this country. It'll take a few generations. The more we don't face these issues, it'll take longer. But what's happening? Corruption, crime, stock standard, academic happenings of a country like ours. So it's us needing to break the barriers of sameness and allow that we unleash the further 75% capacity of this country. This is what we achieved with 25, right? And systematically held back women, right, of all color. Because I don't know a white female CEO or 10 of them I could mention in my hands. None. I can't think of them. So all of that capacity had been held back systematically. Now you free that 2 generations from now, I can't see how South Africa fails. You know, but it's up to you to focus on Eskom because the news tell you to. But think about for hundreds of years, only 25% of our capacity was allowed to thrive and be all they can be. You know, so for me, I'm hugely positive. I mean, we've got a functioning judicial system. In Africa, you don't get a sitting president being dragged in front of the Constitutional Court. Doesn't happen, right? In the DRC, The president died, his son took over. You know, in our case, Duduzane would be king. It would be president today, right? But it's not. We've had power transfer almost 6 times since 94. No bloodshed. In Uganda, you can't mention openly the name Idi Amin, right? You can't speak ill of the president openly. People get killed. We know what the guy, in Libya did as well. So for me, hugely positive about the context in which we're in. And I just think as a leader, you need to be aware of the context. A guy managing in Vietnam has a different context. This is mine, and we need to embrace it. Yeah. So, yeah, that's why I'm positive about it. Yeah. I don't know, is that shot your shot?
That was such a long answer, I'm afraid to ask you another question. No, thanks, Bongani. I think maybe we should bring it, you talked about the country, bring it to AFGRI. How do you see AFGRI? How do you, I mean, we've been in existence nearly 100 years. How do we make sure that it lasts?
Do you want the answer or not?
I want an answer, a long one.
Yeah. So for me, so for me, purpose is important, right? Why I do things is important. Once I get that settled, the day-to-day I can hustle. If it means I work 14 hours to do it, it actually doesn't matter. So the bottom line matters for me, the purpose. And I think the food security strategy that we've set out for ourselves, it is important. And if we all believe in it, I think it's something that we need to pursue. We need a clearer path going forward. You mentioned the need to collaborate, which I think is hugely important, because then you rationalize the costs and that. But I think more than anything is seeing each other. You know, we still have things we need to deal with to make sure that we function at the right level as an organization. You know, and I think the more we create these spaces where people talk and open up, and we have a leadership that's not too sensitive, you know, you can listen to the message and walk away and think about it and stuff. And I just think everyone is, in some way, and you said this earlier, a leader. And I've worked with incredible people in this organization, and I think we need to remember that as we unleash each other and we really open up the space for all of us to thrive as a collective, there's no way the business would fail. You know, strategically, I think we've got a place in the market. You know, there are very few organizations that are set up like us and have the depth of knowledge that we sit with. So I'm hugely encouraged that with the right things, we'll be able to do the right thing. Yeah. Do you want to give us a flash? I got something for you in the interest of cultural exchange. So I promised you this thing for the longest time.
Is it cattle?
And Tinus had said to me that he's never had hot wings. So I can't understand a South African who's never had hot wings. If you haven't had, go to Chicken Liquid. It's called a meal 8. Fantastic.
Is it enough to...
No, it's for you. It's for you. Meal 8 means 8 pieces of wings. Hot ones. You have to have. Right. Cool. Thank you. I don't know if...
Thank you. I wonder, is there any questions while we've got Tinus and Bongani here? Anything you want to ask them in terms of legacy and in the context that they were talking this morning? Anybody's got a question?
So my question about legacy was, Tinus, you said that at the beginning that you worked a bit too hard, and then you got to the point where you realized that you were doing too much, and then you slowed down. But what I wanted to ask was, to amass the amount of success that you have, do you not believe that at some point you need to give yourself the time to just plow yourself into your work Or I think it's a give and take of some sort. Isn't there where you need to choose, I'm going to give it the time, I might have to neglect people, but I'm going to do it. Or the alternative is you could have that balance right from the beginning, but I don't know if you're going to amass the same amount of success if you do. So, I mean, okay, so the question is,
sacrifice is necessary.
Do you not believe it's a decision that you need to make? Whether you're going to just dive into the work or you're going to balance it out from the beginning, and you should be okay with the result after that.
Yeah, it's a difficult one to answer. Again, if I had it over again, I would definitely change and spend more time with the family. I think you're right, there should be a balance. You don't have to work harder. These days with all the technology, you can work smarter. So for me, it's a mind shift. If you want to be successful, it depends on how you see success. Those days for me it was, if you borrow money from the land bank, you have to give it back. And I'm not talking about individual farmers, I was dealing with cooperatives. That's why I refer to a lot of mergers and even co-ops and smaller companies that went belly up. But it's not all about that. So for me, it depends on how you see yourself. For me, those days was get the money back. And then I realized it's more about that. It's not only getting the money back, because in the process, I did a lot of damage to individuals. So I could have done it in another way. And again, if you decide up front what your purpose is, how you're going to get there, just stick to that. But keep in mind that family time is important. And it's not only set yourself a time, you're going to dive into it now for 2 years, 3 years, 5 years, and then slow down. That's not the way to do it. Decide up front how you're going to get to your end goal and stick to that. But keep family time part of it. I don't know if I'm answering your question.
So I guess it might take longer, but the balance is important.
Yeah. Balance is important.
So on that, I'm reminded of a quote that says, an opinion asked for has got a lot of value. So asking the opinion is it's got a lot of value, Tinus. Thank you for that. Anybody else got a question? There at the back, please.
I hope this is for Bongani. It's also, yeah.
Good morning, everybody. Bongani, just a quick question, and I'll have kind of like a 2-in-1 question, basically. You brought in the 25 versus the 75%, bringing in the elephant in the room as well. Obviously, with the 25, I believe there's obviously certain stages that has been brought into place, and obviously the way has been paved. In your opinion, how do you believe that we can then bring in the 75%, obviously with the challenges that they're facing, and how do we pass on the baton? And then a general question is that obviously with success being handed over to the 75%, it becomes a bit more difficult because then the period or the span of handing over the baton is much quicker. How do we go about it?
Yeah. Tough question. So I don't think you're handing over the success to the 75. You're sharing with the 75. So you already have, let's call it a spade, white males who've been allowed to thrive. So you need to open up, and this is up to all of us, for the white female to thrive as much too, and the black man to thrive as much too, and the black woman to thrive as much. That's where the 75 comes from. So systematically, what I was referring to is that by law, and as a society, we've held back the other 3 categories of our communities, right? So it's actually bringing those along, and this will take time. Education is going to be a big part of it. Legislation is going to be a big part of it. That's why you have BE and transformation and those things to actually bring in. What is said is how companies need BE to do the right thing, right? Essentially, what we should be doing is to say, so here's, and I told you we're racial, black lady asking, so I'm going to use a black example. So if we were 4 brothers at home, right, or 4 siblings, and the others were 3 girls, and our father said to us, the girls are not allowed to go to school, but we stay in this home, and the brother who's allowed to work can't leave, so he has to support the other, all right? He goes and he earns whatever he earns to come support the rest of the family. So he's burdened, right? But as soon as you allow, dad lifts the stupid law and says, girls can go to school now. Now the brother's weight of supporting the family has been lightened. So that's how you think about how systematically our laws have pushed only 25% to carry the burden of South Africa. If you think about it, the taxes, I think we have less than 2 million taxpayers in South Africa. A lot of us need to subsidize people for electricity and water in townships, right? They don't pay. But this is a result of a system that had said 75% can't be as excellent as the other 25, right? So now, these are kids in your mother's house that you need to support. That's why you're paying so much in electricity. So when you unleash the other 75, then we all pay our way through life and tax does not become ridiculous, right? That's, I don't know if that answers your question, but a lot of education needs to go, and there's a time element to it. So it's a generational thing that we need to think about.
All right, my question is going to be on Tinus. I've been hearing that you are leaving, and somehow I get to hear that you are not leaving. What is it exactly? Okay, the reason that I'm asking, I could pick up that most probably you're still going to be around, and suppose it's more trying to assess as to what is it that I can do to try and take more from you, because I could see your qualities are the best that anyone could take to a better level. And the honest truth is that I really don't know you because I've just joined the company. I've been seeing you in the floor, almost all the time. You're looking on the ground when you walk around. So really, the truth is I really don't know you. It's only that I got the opportunity now to see that there is a lot that I can get from you.
Yes, I will be around. I will still even have an office in the building. I'm going to be involved in Siloco, the new company that needs someone independent to look after the interests of all the investors. And I'll also still be on the international board and also still be involved with the farmers via the advisory forums that we have with the farmers all over the country. So in a smaller capacity, reduced capacity, but I will still be around.
Okay, from my side, I remember when we started off with AFGRI, Teresa made a video with all 4 of the different MDs and Tinus on it. And the camera people that are here. But at the end of the video, when I looked at it, there was the letter 555. It was actually 5 minutes and 55 seconds, the length of the video. And when I looked at it, I looked at the letter 5, and I saw the letter 5 means grace. And I've sent this message to Tinus. I said, Tinus, I just experienced that the time you are entering into as a CEO will be grace upon grace upon grace in the season that you are in. And today, if we look at Tinus, and he doesn't like that we do this, but I just want to mention to you that in the time that under Tinus's leadership, we established AFGRI Ops as an independent business on its own. An invested business with a new, fresh identity. Wilna is very passionate about our identity, but isn't it beautiful to look at the new identity that we established in AFGRI? Plus, on top of that, we went to a BBBE level 2 as a business.
Thanks to Marion and her team.
Thanks to Marion and her team. We started off the support fund, an amazing start of a support fund to our farmers. Under the Golf Day, we got 350,000 Rand for the Golf Day, and we trust that the fund that we have will really continue into the future. Siloco company were established, Transnet were bought, Australia came into the picture, Western Cape came into the picture, we restructured Africa, and then most importantly to me is I believe that, Tinus, you really, really cared about people. You really modeled the principles of respect. We've rolled out the principles of respect in our business, and to me it was always an honor to say, I know that we've got leaders that are modeling this. You are somebody that really walks the talk. You always remain friendly and calm. If I ask people, what do you expect most from a leader? They say, Tinus's friendliness and calmness is something that they will really remember. And as leaders, people catch the spirit of a leader. So it's so important in the way that we show up. So Tinus, hats off to you in terms of your leadership. It was really wonderful being part of that leadership journey. I just want to ask Patrick Roux. Patrick, if you want to come to the front as well. Patrick also just want to contribute to this discussion. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you. First of all, Bongani, you missed your job. Should have been a presenter on Sport at 10 or something. You're really good at it. Well done. Great job. I think you did a marvelous job. So, yeah, Krista and the guys asked if I wanted to say something, and I had the opportunity to write a letter, but I didn't. I thought I would rather say it out of my heart, because I've worked with Tinus now for quite a while. And the only time I ever had any disagreement with Tinus was over a woman. It was, it was when he tried to take my PA away. But we made up, so everything is good. I had the privilege in my life to work with some really inspiring leaders. I started my career with John Deere with a guy with the name of Bert Peppler. He was an absolute legend in the industry, and I learned a lot from Bert. And at that stage in my life when I was young, it was great to have him as the leader, because you do go through phases. I thought the question at the back was very pertinent. How hard do you work at what stage of your life? But initially you're dumb, and then you work really hard because you're dumb. But then you become more clever, and you realize that that movement isn't equal to action, and that the results are much more important than how hard you work. And that is where Tinus is in his life. I think in his life he said that lately, is that he realized that you can achieve great results without just doing a lot of work and moving a lot. You can think and you can be clever about it. And then I had the privilege to work with a guy with the name of Johan Dick at Senwes. He restructured Senwes when we were super bankrupt, and I learned a lot from him of being honest and talking honest to people and telling them what the problem is. And then people will understand where you come from and what it's about. Then I moved to AFGRI, and I worked with Louis Smith. And I learned from Louis of making decisions. Louis went wrong or right, but he went. Sometimes slightly impulsive, but it was great to understand that you can also move. And then, I worked with Tinus. In the last couple of years, Tinus was my direct head, and I had the opportunity to work with him. And I can only describe Tinus in one way. You know, I played rugby in my earlier career. You can see I'm not a soccer player. And as it is in the old days, after you played a rugby game, sometimes you went for a drink and your team were together and there was other people and there was always conflict. And usually it was a scrum half that started the conflict, or the hooker. And they would start the conflict. But when the proverbial popo hit the fan, usually it was only a couple of guys left standing and the rest would leave. Now I'm telling you that Tinus would be the guy standing. He's not the guy to start the problems, but he's the guy to finish it. And that's the way I see Tinus. And that's all I have to say about that.
Thank you.
The last person is Herman. Herman is going to also say something about leaving a legacy, and then we'll wrap this up. Thank you.
Thank you, Krista. I had the opportunity while Tinus was in Unigro to report directly to him. So in his 13 years that he's been with AFGRI, I worked with him quite significantly and closely. And I think they've done a good job in terms of the discussion, just to tell us who Tinus is. But I think very few of us really understand the impact Tinus has had in agriculture in a career that spanned almost 45 years. And I want to share a story with you that really brought that home for me. As UniGrow, 4 or 5 years ago, we decided we'd like to expand, we'd like to go into different geographical areas. And at the time we identified the Northern Cape and we said, but this is an area, big irrigation takes place there, there's quite significant farmers there. And we'd like to establish a presence in that area. It's a brand new area for us, we don't know anything about the area, we don't know people there, we don't have staff. And Tinus put us into contact with Stephen van Huisteen, who's the MD of KLK Cooperative. And we started talking to Stephen, Ross and myself. We had a few meetings with him. And after a couple of months, we thought, sure, we think we might have something that's going to work. And Stephen asked us to come and give a presentation to their board in Uppington. So we flew down. Tinus went along. Tinus spoke on AFGRI, where the group is going. Ross did a presentation on UniGrow, what our strategy is, what we are doing. And I spoke on our interaction with farmers and products and what we roll out to clients. And that was about a 2-hour session where we had a discussion with the members of that board. And at the end of that meeting, the board members turned to their chairman and said, like, he's the guy that must make the decision. So the chairman sits back. Tinus mentioned Oranje River Co-op earlier in the conversation. And the chairman says, I know Tinus from 20 years ago when we had difficulty in this business. And if Tinus says that this is an opportunity that we should look at as KLK, then I support it. And from that I just realized the impact that Tinus has had in the lives that he's touched. And we see his humility, but it also speaks to me of the integrity that he has as a person. That people who dealt with him, even 20 years ago, will say, you know what, if I have the opportunity to deal with this person again in business, then I will do it without thinking twice about that. And I think in terms of leaving a legacy, for us sitting in this room, that is such an important lesson that we can take from Tinus and from his life. And we speak about what we want to achieve as individuals and what we'd like to achieve as a company and as a business. If we portray that message to our clients and the people we interact with, and we treat them with integrity, then we will always be successful in whatever we do. And thank you, Tinus, for the great example you've been to each one of us.
Just maybe a parting shot from me. No, I'm not. There's no story. Just who has not shaken Tinus's hand before? You should. It's a hand hug. Just wanted to say, I'm so happy that we did this together. I couldn't have thought of a better person to do this with. Thank you for...
Thanks, Bongani. Really appreciate it. Thanks,
Thank
Krista.
you very much. Let's give him a nice hand.
It's a wrap.